The stage is set for a historic dialogue and diplomacy. India's G20 moment is here. The day we waited for so long with bated breath. Times Now will get you the most immersive and widest coverage on this two-day high-profile summit, from the inside details of meetings to the first visuals of the grand setup. All the updates right here on Times Now. Today it is when the world leaders will be coming on one stage. In fact, the goal is one Earth, one family, one future. Remember, India has given the motto of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Right now, all of the world leaders are being welcomed by Prime Minister Modi. Abhijit Ayar Mitra here with me, Senior Fellow at the IPCS in the studio. Abhijit, we're going to have, of course, all of them being welcomed singly. And it's interesting, the backdrop which has been chosen by the Prime Minister. We also have with us Victor Gao, Chair Professor at the Soochow University, and China analyst Robert Kuhn, China commentator and columnist, and Elizabeth Braw, Senior Fellow at the AIE, also with us. But the backdrop chosen, the Konark Wheel.
Well, it's a very significant wheel, isn't it? Because what it symbolizes is essentially timelessness. There are certain things culturally about India that are timeless that he's trying to project. But more importantly, the wheels have to be kept in motion. This is, if China tries to act as a barricade, it's almost kind of symbolizing that, we're not really going to tolerate much by way of blockades or pointless procedural stoppages of the agenda. Something is going to come through. I think we're very determined about this. From what I understand, all the low-hanging fruit have already been incorporated into the summit declaration. It's the sort of the higher-hanging fruit, if you want to call it that, that will now go through that difficult stage. Because remember, Padmaja, those things can only be ceded by the head of government. The lower functionaries, secretary level, etc., are not able to give much on that. So let's see how that happens. So it's a very it's both a cultural symbol being put forward, but it's also a statement, a sort of statement of purpose, a statement of intent.
Essentially, it's an economic, it's all about business, Abhijit. But other than the business on the table, what are the two things that you think are going to be most important for you as an observer that should be hammered down over the next 24 hours?
Primarily, I think the women-led development and climate change, which are the two, they're point 1 and point 6 on the agenda. Why? Because there's lots of things about climate change where this is also kind of turning into this technology-centric, almost a technology denial regime, in a sense. So what are we going to see in that? What are we going to see in terms of climate finance being given to the other countries? This is something very important. And this is where I think, India did something very smart in seeing to it that the African Union joins. Because, we don't want this to be a capital expenditure for them. We want them to see this as sustainable development, which they are being invested in. And mind you, this isn't the first time Africa has been invested in. Through the 60s, there was a lot of money going in, but they all ended up being white elephant projects. So how is this sort of phase of investment in Africa not going to be a white elephant, unlike the 60s and 70s Cold War investment?
Sorry to interrupt you for just a second, Abhijit. Let me go across to my colleague Akanksha. I believe she has her Shingla with her. Yes.
A lot of activities which are there in place and which will definitely, I think, hold the attention of the most important international leaders who are going to be here for the G20 Summit.
So as a chief coordinator of G20, how challenging was this for you to coordinate all this?
Well, it's been a whole of government exercise, and I think a whole of nation exercise, because people in every corner of India have been involved in the G20 effort. And so from that point of view, planning and preparation started a long time back. And today we are, quite comfortable in the fact that all the arrangements are very much in place. And as we are about to receive, our Prime Minister is about to receive the world's leaders, the backup and background and the entire, work that goes into making the summit is well in place.
Thank you for speaking with us. So this was G20 Chief Coordinator Harshvardhan speaking to us about the arrangements that have been made, and also what all is there that will be done during the day when the G20 summit will take place here at Bharat Mandapam.
Thanks very much, Akanksha. Elizabeth Braw, good morning here from India. Which one of these engagements will you be watching most keenly?
be watching everything, but most especially, I will be watching how these countries manage to, if climate change or indeed investment in the developing world, if they manage to reach some sort of agreement there, because that is where there is, as your previous speaker said, opportunity for collaboration. In other areas, it's such a tense moment, and as we know, some of the countries are not minded to agree with some of the other countries. So it's probably the most tense situation you can imagine for this grouping in a very long time. And climate is the one area where there might be some sort of agreement, simply because it is a problem that we all share.
Abhijit, Rishi Sunak there being received by the Prime Minister. There was much commentary yesterday. Apparently, the MOS, who was deputed to welcome him, greeted him to India with Jai Siya Ram.
Well, I mean...
and tomorrow he's going to Akshardham Temple. You can bet there's going to be a lot of talk about that.
Of course there is. I mean, but what's wrong with it? I mean, we're very proud of our culture. Why should we use a sort of foreign greeting? Jai Siya Ram is a perfectly acceptable gender-neutral greeting, because Siya is Sita and Ram is Rama. And it was Rishi Sunak and his wife, husband and wife, the positive, negative, the yin, the yang, the masculine, feminine coming. You give a appropriate welcome to them, very culturally appropriate. I support it 100%. What's wrong with it?
No, but he's not just using it in India. It's also Sushant Sareen in the UK. Perhaps the first time ever. I can't think of any other time where a UK Prime Minister is attending any event at all and starting it with Jai Siya Ram.
Yeah, so Padmaja, if he's owning up to his own culture, his own heritage, as a British citizen, as a British guy, but with his own cultural traditions, I don't know why there are many people in India, not people like you and me or Abhijit, but there are many people in India who suffer from this deep inferiority complex, this deep self-loathing. Why are we serving millets? How is this inclusive? You go to Britain, if they're serving salmon, that's inclusive. But if out here we are serving something which is part of our cultural heritage and our traditions, it becomes, I don't know what affects these inferiority struck people out here. So I think we are trying to not only showcase India, but I think this is part of the process of the rediscovery of India, the reassertion of India, and you know, a self-expression which is coming out. And if Rishi Sunak owns up to his own heritage, I don't see why you know, there are people who are getting apoplectic about it. Deal with it. There are people from other countries who own up to their heritage, and they're welcome to it, and they should. Why not? But the point is, just because I own up to my heritage, my culture, my traditions, does not mean that I'm actually deriding or I am, you know, I'm rejecting somebody else's culture and traditions and heritage. That's not India. That's not what we are.
Speaking of cultural heritage, we see there
tolerance among people who pretend to be very liberal and very enlightened in India. I think they're the most intolerant, fascist people in this country, rather than you know, anybody else.
Speaking of culture, we see one of the tallest Nataraj statues, which has been established, which has been installed outside Bharat Mandapam.
Which incidentally, Padmaja, is the cosmic dance, isn't it? And what better than that as a symbol to a meeting as pivotal and as important as the G20, where the most important countries in the world are coming together and I'll only say trying to solve some of the most vexing problems of the world. So I think the statue of Nataraj with this cosmic dance is extremely appropriate.
And, you know, just the size of the statue in a way also symbolizes the magnitude and the expanse of this entire event. This 27-foot tall statue weighing 18 tons. It was brought all the way from Tamil Nadu, which is where it was, you know, it was sculpted out of Ashtadhatu. And then in a 36-tire trailer, it had to be brought from Tamil Nadu right up till Delhi and installing it. So just the scale of the entire logistics that have gone into the making of this one event. Let's go across to Sabyasachi and Rishabh, who are joining us live from Bharat Mandapam. Rishabh and Aishwarya there with us. Rishabh, first over to you. Just quickly take us through the day's big engagements. What are we expecting over the next 12 hours?
Let me directly go across to Rishabh for that. Rishabh, please tell us about big engagements that is lined up for today as far as first day of the G20 Summit is concerned.
Well, it is a very packed day when it comes to G20. There are two sessions, as we know. First session talks about One Earth and second session talks about One Family. But what's also important are the bilaterals that are lined up for today. India has a bilateral with United Kingdom as well as Japan in the afternoon. And then in evening, we'll have a bilateral with Italian Prime Minister as well. There are two side multilateral events as well. One, what we are given to understand, is a very crucial railway and port agreement that is being signed between India, US, Saudi Arabia, UAE and Oman. That will be very, very important. And then there is a multilateral engagement over biofuel as well, and we can hear an agreement on biofuel as well today. So very packed schedule for leaders today. Apart from these, then there will be a dinner hosted by the president in the evening. That will be an informal dinner where all the leaders will meet once again. As of now, as we are talking, the leaders have started arriving, and we'll have a group photograph anytime now.
Well, certainly. And tomorrow we'll see another session, that is One Future, and later there would be a final communication that will come out, a dialogue will come out, or a Delhi declaration that is on the agenda as far as G20 Summit is concerned, and certainly going to be a very historic one.
Among the bilaterals, the one that really stands out, Victor Gao and Mr. Robert Kuhn, is the one with Japan. When it comes to the issue of China, of course, in India, Mr. Kuhn, people are still wondering, why did Xi Jinping not turn up? Is it because of his own domestic problems? Is it because it wouldn't really be the best stage to be sharing where India really gets the spotlight?
That question about Xi Jinping is the opening sentence in my new book, Xi Jinping's New Era China, The Inside Story, published by Pentagon Press in New Delhi. And the answer begins by the international press likes to look at China through a single prism to have one idea. There are always multiple reasons why things happen. So let's analyze it. The person representing China is Premier Li Qiang. Li Qiang is the closest person to Xi Jinping. And so Xi Jinping feels perfectly comfortable now delegating to people who he has known for virtually his entire career as a leader, that he has total confidence in. That said, that President Xi normally is at these things, so we have to continue to ask why. And there are a host of different reasons. If we contrast BRICS, where China is the major player, and we had the 6 new countries, and that's becoming a very more important organization a few weeks ago, and now the G20, roughly half of the G20 are formal allies of the U.S., with India being the prominent country. And great credit to India for hosting this. It's a great time, a great emergence for India. So India's in the spotlight. President Biden is there with Prime Minister Modi, and so they will be the primary centers of it. And with the war in Ukraine and people blaming China for supporting Russia, it probably doesn't have the right combination. There are certainly problems in China, but I think in terms of the economy, these are things that are well known, but nothing so serious that would divert President Xi. This is just part of a normal interactions. I want to finally stress that if we say that the first half of the 21st century will be determined by U.S.-China relations, the second half will be determined by India-China relations. So this is a very important topic, and we look forward to its continuing to follow it.
Lula da Silva, there we have him on the screen right now, President of Brazil, being received by the Prime Minister. Too much being read into Xi's absence?
No, I don't think there's too much being read. I think it's fairly straightforward as to why Xi would be absent. Remember, since Xi took over as president, he hasn't avoided a single G20 summit. This will be the first one he's missing. And I've always held this had to go back to BRICS. He was looking for certain concessions. You know, this is classic of Chinese diplomacy, that, you know, them coming to you is a great thing for you. It's not great for me, it's great for you. I am blessing you by coming to your house, kind of an attitude. So what happens is they expect you almost to grovel in a sense and give them concessions here and there just for the honor of being able to host them. Now, if you remember, during BRICS, there was this talk. It became a bit of a controversy about that bilateral meeting that was held where the border was discussed. Clearly, some things were asked for about the border, which Modi refused to give. And Xi has played his hand and decided not to come. You know, India loses absolutely nothing from this. The point is, this is the biggest party in town happening at the moment, and Xi's the one who's missing out on it. So best of luck to him. Are we reading too much into it? No, this is classic Chinese tactics. It's very old tactics. To a point, it's almost gotten to the point of being boring now. Because, you know, this is what they do. The map that they came out, that outrageous map that they came out, where the 9-dash line seems to have become a 10-dash line now. They do this, and then, you know, India never reacted forcefully or anything like that. We put out a very dignified statement, but they put out a statement saying India should act with caution and maturity,
and don't overreact.
And don't overreact. Who overreacted exactly? So, you know, Twitter folks overreacting is not the government overreacting. So, you know, these are childish little games that they love to play with their own population. I don't know what the internal messaging so far has been, but not our loss. I'm quite happy he didn't come.
Okay, so whose loss is it really? We're going to take a very quick break. Back in just a second.